Well, hello there. I'm Ed Bellina,
How are you guys? Alvaro Cuba here.
and today we're coming to you with a special guest speaker that just happens to have the same last name as me, David Bellina, who happens to be one of my general managers, Operational Excellence Consulting, and also happens to be my son. So, David, welcome to your first manufacturing meetup podcast. Um, so
Welcome,
we
David.
all kinds of fun here.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks.
pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure for sure.
Terrific. So I think we're going to have a really fun-filled episode for you. We have our news as always. Alvaro's kind of put together some really cool stuff focused on waste, and we've got a couple comments, and then we're going to dive into the topics of integrated work systems, etc. So welcome to Manufacturing Meetup Team. This is a podcast. It's a show where we kick back. We relax. We talk about our downtime and our efficiencies on the shop floor. And hopefully we learn something from you. You learn something from us. So welcome, Manufacturing Meetup Buddies.
Thank you, Ed. So, as you were mentioning, guys, we came coincidentally in the week around three different news on waste, and on the first one, it's a restaurant in London where they are thinking zero waste. We are not going to throw anything away. So they decided they put the bins out of the door. So they do that, and they call it for the case of animals, nose to tail, and for vegetables and fruits, they call it root to tip. So everything. And just to give you an example, they pick us a pumpkin, and what they do is the guts go into the sauce, the peel goes into a marmalade. An extra peel goes in seasoning, and the pulp is the main dish. So they combine all this with other elements, and as you saw, the entire pumpkin, zero waste. The second news,
amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God.
The second news is something similar, but in a complete different industry. It's the fashion industry. A pioneer on environmental fashion is Gabriela Hearst, and what she's thinking is exactly the same as the restaurant: is we don't throw away anything, we repurpose. And on top of repurposing, obviously they go into natural fabrics or materials. They track who makes it or from where they come. And even the rancho is a zero emission of carbon. So think about these two cases, and Ed will bring one additional one, but it's reverse engineering. And that's what I think we need to think in manufacturing. When we talk about waste in manufacturing, we are thinking about, okay, how I reduce the materials that are bad quality, or how I reduce the material that when the line is not running well. What if we take it to the next level and really start doing reverse engineering? No, I remember two examples. One, the crew of a gun line, they were through TPM, and the crew gained some time out because the line was working great. And then they had, with this time in their hands, they start thinking, what else we can do? And they noticed that when you do the gum and the line, it used to use talc. But
Right.
the talc is a lot of pollution, is a source of contamination. It's even dangerous for explosion and all that. So they got with the supplier and other people in R&D, and they came with an oil, edible oil. They start putting into that. The product improved. The contamination went to zero.
Wow.
The line was running 4 hours nonstop because there was no contamination, which reduced all the other waste. And they did that thinking from the process. You can imagine marketing and the sales guys were thrilled.
Right.
And the other example is same case, but in this case, the crew decided to go to the shelf and see the product on the shelf. And they discovered that the cases, and this was powder beverage, it was too big, too much space in the case and all that. So they came back and they worked with the supplier on a much more case recycled materials, and they put it in place. So they save money to the business. They help the customer to put it better in the shelf. It was a better look in the shelf, and they eliminated a lot of waste into the process. So I think it's a way that we need to start thinking, as you are seeing different industries are already moving into that direction. So in manufacturing, we have a big opportunity. Ed?
No, that's those are great points. By the way, I have tried the watermelon rind, and some syrup. Not a fan, but I'm sure we could do better in time. But I do like the pepitas. I'd love to see it. So, switching gears, similar
just
topic.
Throw the bean out, and then you like things much better.
So it was funny because I did not start out trying to find something that would fit your waist, but it just happened that way. That's the kind of synchronicity you and I have. So I'm a little bit of a fan of 3D printing. I have a couple of them at home. I've printed out some things that are useful, some that are just like fun. But so I'm very interested in the potential, and it is growing by leaps and bounds. Today, we have companies that will actually print replacement parts for their machines. They may today not have the same life. For example, you print up a gear, right, or a sprocket on the 3D printers. They probably won't have the same life as a hardened machined gear. But when you're looking for a part and it's 3 months out, because it has to come from overseas, and you can print one that may last you 2 months. It's a lifesaver. But the stuff is a topic that I wanted to bring up was I saw an article from University of Alaska where they are using 3D printing to print homes, and that in of itself is not that new. That has been experimented with for the last probably 4 or 5 years. And it's a funky looking thing. I mean, it looks like a 3D printer that's just pouring concrete back and forth in layers. Pretty cool to watch. They can literally finish a house in, I think, 7 days. But Alaska has taken it even further because Alaska, as you can imagine, has some very specific challenges when it comes to
doing igloos.
Oh yeah, permafrost, right? Some of their buildings are on permafrost, so you can't allow the heat that's in the house to go into that permafrost, or they will sink. So they are utilizing essentially waste materials to enhance and also reuse material. They're using fly ash. They're using some amount of consumer waste, right? Different fibers. So it's so cool that that technology is not only much more sustainable, much quicker. We can build homes for a lot less money, which could really help with some of our housing issues, but also the fact that we're now using renewable materials. So anyway, I thought that was a great tie into your story, and I'm a little bit of a 3D printing geek, so I kind of went with.
Well, if everything goes as to zero waste, go for it, Ed.
It's a beautiful thing.
What do you think about it?
No, I think it's great. To Ed's point, the 3D printing, it's a great tool, right? I experienced that in the field where we had a brand new piece of equipment, came overseas, started up the machine, and we had a forced deterioration And unfortunately, the manufacturer didn't even have that part as a spare yet. So we were able to get the drawings from them and 3D print it out of a kind of a carbon fiber material in order to keep us going and running. So it's great to be able to have that type of technology. And for a waste standpoint, I mean, a lot of companies are going to this 100%, recycled plastics, which, are great, but require some complex machinery in order to, put their product into it. So yeah, I think, the next wave of our future is, of course, is recycling, and make sure that we're able to, whatever things that we discard, we're able to try and get back into a secondary or a third use. So yeah. It's pretty cool.
Thank you, David. And think, guys, we have the power of do reverse engineering in the plants.
Yeah.
So that, and the other thing is the new generations, they love nature and they love to reduce the waste. So there is a big connection there. Okay. So moving on to our main topic of today, which is the evolution of work systems. And then we'll have David sharing with us his experience on the plant and with TPM and also 5S and other great technologies. But before going to that, just a quick evolution, at least from a century, and how it worked. In the early 19th century, we had the machines, but they were still not assembled into lines, and that was the priority. And you all know Ford did a great job doing that and put the line for a 4T, but fixed mentality and no innovation. Every car is fine as far as it is black.
Yeah.
As long as it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly, time passed in the 40s due to Second World War. Military style took the manufacturing arena, and everything was top down, and then output was priority. How I triple or quadruple the amount of planes, ships, or tanks because we need it. And in fact, we did it. So those are the first two. Ed, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, coming out of World War II, it was interesting because obviously the Japanese economy was a wreck. Their industry had been largely wrecked. The same thing with Germany, and it was an opportunity for these countries to almost take a green sheet approach to say, okay, our factories have been bombed out. How do we start this and do it differently? And you started getting the birth of things like statistical process control, which obviously the birth of it was in the United States, but the U.S. was on hyper steroids with an economy firing on all cylinders. Yeah. They weren't interested in this guy, W. Edwards Deming, right? He took his science of statistical process control to Japan. And Japan was like, we have nothing to lose, folks, right? Let's take this technology. And that became the birth of statistical process control, eventually the base that started the Toyota manufacturing systems. And I'll never forget, right, when I became, teenager, a little bit older, I could afford a vehicle. I'm sorry, but most of the cars coming out of Detroit were terrible. They had horrible reliability, yes, right, and all that. And Toyota, I mean, the Japanese, and your
quality and lean was not there.
No, not at all. Just get it out. But I was chuckling when you talked about the Model T Ford, because at one point in time, Honda only offered 5 colors, okay, on the Accord. That was it. Oh, you want Tutti Frutti? No, we don't make that. And you're going to lose business. That's okay, because we see the value of simplicity. So, but of course, nothing ever stops, right? And we continued with figuring out, once we get these processes working, what about the people, right? How do we engage the shop floor? How do we take a more humanistic view to engaging more just the brawn and their arms and hands, but their brains and to some degree their hearts? So we started moving up in collaborative work, and Alvaro, what came next?
Yeah. Well, now you hear Ed talking about quality in one side, people in other side. We talk about production and efficiency. So it was great, but it was dispersed and different things. So the next evolution came with the TPM or Total Work Systems that incorporated all of them in one comprehensive program, 9 pillars, 11 pillars, or whatever pillars you want, but it included this time culture and training and people, and then safety and quality, then all the production, and put it in a way that you could start and follow a process to get from the phase 0 to phase 4 and see the evolution. So that was the next one. And it tied with how, if we are doing this in manufacturing, we need to expand it, because doing it in isolation in manufacturing doesn't work. So the thinking that the next evolution of TPM was how I expand this and incorporate the suppliers, procurement, and then also the supply chain and the customers. What's next, Seth, on the evolution?
These are all building blocks, right? So we started with pretty basic things, right? Got to get the equipment running well, got to get our quality where it needs to be. Then how do we integrate people? How do we create these high performance work systems and great cultures? And then how do we expand outwards to our suppliers and our customers, right? So we have better forecasting systems. So we improve our customer delight or order fulfillment. So it starts looking like end-to-end supply chain optimization. And it takes, the old thing, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes more than a village to get these supply chains to run well, folks, right?
Yeah.
Something as simple as your system, like your systems have to talk to each other. If, in a perfect world, I'm running a bottle line and I bring in empty bottles, if I'm not blow molding, just in time, just when I need them. But if my system can't talk to my supplier system and they don't know that I had a demand change that caused me to change to a different bottle, and that gets to them 3 days later, guess what? I'm now sitting on a bunch of trailers full of product that I don't really need right now, and I got to make space for. So this end-to-end optimization, and by the way, it's good for all of us, right? Because our suppliers can deal with less surprises and less just in time, and our consumers and our customers get to delight in our customer service and order fulfillment. So we all win while we bring prices down, costs down, and bring profits up in service. Alvaro, you got the telescope for the future. Tell us about 4.0.
Well, it's not really the future. No, it's starting to be the present.
Yep.
I agree with you. We still have a long way to go, but you start to see the components of the next generation, which is Industry 4.0, which basically it blurs the boundaries between the physical, the digital, and the biological world. So if you think, now that you have the line and the machine and the people, and you start getting the quality, the safety, all what Ed described, and now comes all this new technology, artificial intelligence and faster communication and VR or robotics. And from the other side, it's coming all this genetic engineering and biotech, which start incorporating the people side, So the lenses where with the move of your eyes, you can do things, or your voice can activate things. And right now is how we put all that together and take full advantage and even predict what is going to happen. And that's what I'm sure you all guys in your plants are trying to figure it out, how to start, how to go, how to combine all these pieces and do it in a most effective and efficient way. And Ed and I have been talking a lot about this, and we'll continue because it's very exciting. Every time we see this coming, the opportunities are huge. But
And if I
sorry,
wanted,
go ahead.
no, I just wanted to add a quick little point on this whole what the future brings. So one of the worst jobs that we have in our plants are people that have to handpick cases, right? Cases of product could be 20, 30 pounds. It's a lot of work, and sometimes you're picking one at a time. Well, there has been some work done with exoskeletons, right? And it's not quite there yet to help remove the load and how how much energy it takes. But now they're taking it to a new level where they actually have folks that have had brain implants, neural implants that were quadriplegics that are allowing them to actually walk with some of this. So anyway, I just had to come up with that. But I'm going to switch over to Alvaro because we've got some questions for David.
Absolutely. I just read the last piece. I just read the new goggles for swimmers. That the goggles is telling exactly what parts of your body are you moving and which ones are you moving the right way and which ones you are moving the wrong way and how to correct it. So, guys, this is now, as we were saying, but we wanted to have David, and thank you again, David, for being with us today. David has experience. We always want to bring examples, concrete things, not only this talk, but experience on the field. And David has this experience, especially with TPM in his plant times. So, David, really, you are in the plant. How TPM rollout really works from inside?
Yeah. So the first thing that you kind of have to do with a rollout is to understand where you're at now. What is your current status in the plant? Whether they have any preventative maintenance programs already in place, safety, quality perspectives, all that ties together when it comes to kind of that first initial rollout, just to see what you're doing. And then initializing the training and understanding the fundamentals of TPM, right? So getting not just the frontline people, right, but the management, upper management involved, trained, and understand kind of what the TPM process brings to their plant. So some great things happen when you roll a program out with TPM in a plant that's never done it before. So it was interesting. I got to do that with one of the career positions I had in my life.
So, David, what kind of barriers did you encounter? As you obviously, anytime you try to roll something out new, there's always the fear of change and all that. But what were some of the issues that you saw?
One issue that I saw was actually a plant that embraced a very similar process to TPM, but then kind of laxed a bit over the years due to whatever. COVID was a great example of that, right? Where everybody was, let's get everything out, do what we got to do. And then kind of rolling it back in, saying, guys, we got to dive back into this. Here's some other processes, some new kind of ideas. And it was getting some of those tenured employees to go, well, hey, we've tried this before and it worked for a little while, but things kind of went, sideways, whatever the case may be, and then bringing it back to them. Changing that attitude is probably one of the biggest struggles that I've seen when it comes to that.
It's interesting because probably Ed and I'm sure we saw exactly the same. You are seeing it. So it always goes down to people and the change management. It's critical. On the other hand, David, on the benefits that it generated and on the perceived benefits, not always the same thing.
Yeah, so benefit-wise, we did a deep dive, a Kaizen event on a labeler once. And again, had been deprived a bit, right? We were trying to get a lot of product off the floor. And by doing that deep dive, I'm sorry, not a labeler, it was a sleever. We were able to clean up a bunch of, contamination, getting, the whole area clean and organized, and also getting that machine back to like new condition. Which helped the operators when it came to finding things that were problems, right? by clearing the area and being able to see what you're looking at instead of having a bunch of buildup of grease or dirt or whatever the case may be, that gave the opportunity to go, hey, look, that's not right. That's not normal. And it also gave the operator that stronghold of, you're cleaning to inspect and you're inspecting to detect, and you're there to detect defects, right? So that also gives them that buy-in and understand that the machine works good. I'm able to pick things up quick and get it fixed and resolved quickly.
Awesome. So we probably should have done a quick buy on David, but we like to work things fluidly on this podcast, as you may have figured out. So we decided to show you the guy and show you his experience and then tell you a little bit about him. So 10 seconds or less, David has 15 plus years of experience in the beverage industry with Pepsi, Keurig Dr. Pepper, and even spent some time with a corrugate manufacturer, packaging company, PCA. And I snagged him away a year and a half ago to be my GM for Operational Excellence Consulting. So I'm thrilled. And that's a segue to his last question, which is talk about the importance of 5S as the foundation, because this guy here is the guy that laid out our valve rebuild shop. Okay. I trusted him. He laid it out. I gave him some input because, of course, I can't just not have an opinion. But he was good, but
I
he
think
laid
we
it
know
out.
that guy, David, don't we?
When even Alvaro takes a shot, it's true. And he did an amazing job applying those 5S principles. We talked about one other time. As you can see, I'm on the road now. We want to show you some videos, some pictures of our shop because we really are very proud of it, and it really is David's, baby. So, David, the importance of 5S as a foundation, then you can bring it home.
Yeah. So real quick, just a great example that I did in a plant in the AM meeting kickoff. So we had an AM event. We sat down, and I had 2 tool bags with me. Okay. One tool bag had a bunch of tools in it, wrenches mixed, kind of loosely in the bag, and then I had another organized one. We brought an employee up, and I gave him the first bag. I said, I want you to find me a 10 millimeter wrench. It took him, and we clocked him, took him a good 4 or 5 minutes to kind of dig through and find the right tool, right? Without dumping it all over the table. And then we clocked him on the next one where he pulled out a completely organized, labeled, clear, understood where everything was out on the table and said, okay, now find me a 10 millimeter. Less than 2 seconds, right? Because it's visual. It's in its place. It's where it's supposed to be. And that's the whole premise of 5S, between the sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. The biggest thing is making sure that everything's in its place. It's there when you need it. And it reduces the time for the repair or for that operator to get whatever supplies that they need in order to do their job successfully and in a timely manner. So
Terrific. Alvaro?
Well, yeah, and in 5S, the other thing is you involve the person.
Yeah.
And it creates the culture.
Yeah.
No, it's the same in safety. You have to do it this way. The other ways they do it and they appreciate the benefit for themselves, then it goes.
Right.
So we really appreciate, David, you sharing with us these very concrete examples from the floor, which it's all this podcast is about. No, we are talking to people in the plants, and we want them to hear it. And as you heard in the evolution, it's kind of what we follow when we are in a plant. No, you start with production first, and then you notice that if you don't have quality or you are not lean, it doesn't work. Then you have to involve the people. Once you involve the people, you need a system to make it all work, and the system has to account for the culture. And finally, you start putting some technology onto it. But that's the sequence. And you alluded to that, David, no? So it has to be a sequence, because if you try to jump in technology
Yeah.
without having the basis,
No.
you are technologically making more waste and creating more problems.
Exactly.
So and then it comes this Industry 4.0 that allows us or gives us the vision of much more to come in the future. Ed, any final comments?
No, I think you captured that very, very well. A lot of us are engineers, right? So we get attracted by shiny objects and new technology. But to Alvaro's point, sometimes that just makes you make bad stuff faster for more money. So let's get some of the basics in before we necessarily go find the shiny object technological fix. So
Perfect.
so that's not
Go
to
ahead,
you, Alvaro.
Dave, bring us home, Ed.
I think that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, joining Manufacturing Meetup. Hopefully, these are getting a little bit more interesting and shorter. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe. Like it if you're on YouTube. Leave us a review if you're listening on the other social media, and share the podcast with your friends so we can grow this meetup. Alvaro?
And to keep the conversation going, you can email us as mmu@algory.com or find us on the endpoint. And the most important part, guys, is that you participate, you like it, share it with others, and also please send us your comments and send us your ideas, and we'll take it into the show, and we'll be grateful for that. So thank you for the episode today. Thanks again, David, for being with us.
Anytime. It was good.
Amigo.
It was awesome.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, T.
Yeah.